Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today I want to show you how to make these little house blocks. I have two samples here that I just finished, and I think they turned out pretty cute. Now this is something that I drew up on EQ8. It's very simple, and you will probably see blocks very similar to these online. But what I want to do today is show you how I cut some of these pieces, how I lay them out, and how I sew them together. Now the reason I'm doing this, as I mentioned in a previous video, is that I want to use up all of my Love Note fabric because it's got so many directional pieces in it, and that I was just getting tired of having to work with those directional pieces in more complicated blocks. So I did a video on the bow tie blocks, and this is another block that I thought would be an easy block to use those directional fabrics in. So I want to show you how I made these little house blocks. Okay, so I have my little draft here, my paper draft, and I marked all of the sizes here that I need to cut. And I've got some background fabric strips here. I've got a 1.5 inch and a 2.5 inch strip, and then I have some scrap pieces here that I'm going to use to make the house. So I'm going to go ahead and cut these, and I'll show you what I'm doing here. This is a flying geese unit, so I need, it's 4.5 by 2.5, so I need two 2.5 inch squares. So that's where this strip comes out. Now I went ahead and cut a full strip because I'm going to be making quite a few of these, so I just needed to go ahead and cut a big piece to save me time in the future here while I'm making some of the others. So I'm just going to turn this over and cut a 2.5 inch piece off of this end. So I have two 2.5 inch squares. Now that goes on the roof, and for this one I'm going to use this green stripe. Now one thing about these stripes is you can have them go in whatever direction you want. On this little block here I had them going vertical, but on this one I'm going to have them go horizontal because that's the way my piece is cut. This is just a scrap left over from another block that I made. So let's see if we can do 2.5 by 4.5, and this one is just about perfect. So just need to trim a little bit off of here, and then on these I'm going to draw a diagonal line on the wrong side so I can make my flying geese unit. And this background fabric is not directional, it is a print on print, but it's a tossed print so that there's really no direction. So I'm just going to go ahead and lay these out. And let's see, let's do this. These will go up here. Okay, let me scoot them closer. And for the body of the house, I'm going to use this. Now what I need this piece here, which is 1.5 by 4.5. These two pieces are 2.5 by 2. So let's see what I can get out of this. Okay, that side's not quite straight, so let's try this one. Okay, here's 1.5 by 4.5. So that will go there. And this is a directional print, so I'm going to pay attention to that. These need to be 2.5 by 2. And this is 3 inches wide, so I'm going to cut two 2-inch pieces off. And I'm going to stack these up and cut them to 2.5. So it'll be 2 by 2.5. Okay. Let's move up a little bit further so I have some room. And these two are going to go here. And then the door, I'm going to use this heart, this green heart print. And this is a directional too, so I'm going to watch that. And this needs to be 2.5 by 1.5. So I'll just cut 2.5 by 1.5 out of here. Okay, and the door. And then I have a 1.5 by 4.5 at the top, and I have a 6.5 by 1.5 on either side. So I'm going to go ahead and take this long strip. This is width of fabric, so it's about 42 inches, 44 inches. I'm just going to trim off the selvage. This has got a really deep selvage in it, so that's why I'm cutting that much off. And then I need 6.5. And I could use my board, but I'm going to just use a longer ruler. This one is 6.5 inches wide, so I'm going to go ahead and just use this. And it's doubled over, so I have 2 pieces. Now, if you want a little added security, what you can do is cut these pieces a little bit wider. You really don't need to cut them any longer, but you could cut them a little bit wider. And this print is a little bit hard for me to tell which is the right and the wrong side, because it's a white on white, but it's kind of faint. You could cut these pieces instead of 1.5 wide. You could do 1 3/4 inch wide, or 2 inches wide, and then you can trim everything down if you want. I found with these blocks that when I got done with them, it's 6.5 inches wide, but what I'm losing is the length. So sewing all of these together is where I'm losing part of the length of the block. So sew with the scant 1/4 inch, especially when you're sewing all of these sections together, and that will help. So I'm going to go to the sewing machine and I'll show you how to sew all of this together. I've got a leader and ender here because I found out that I was cutting off a lot of thread. First thing I'm going to do is make the flying geese unit, just barely. Get my iron heating here. Now I don't use leaders and enders much because it takes extra time, but I was using up so much thread going between pieces, I decided it would probably be a good time to use it. So, okay, I'm cutting off that outer triangle and I'm going to press this white piece out right here, and then I'm going to sew the other one on, and I'm going to sew from the center to the bottom left corner. Line that up. Let me sew through this a little further. And now I'm sewing just to the left of that line. Okay, I'm going to trim this one off. Okay, so there's the flying geese unit. Now I'm going to go ahead and sew this 1.5 inch by 4.5 inch strip of background. I'm going to sew that on. And I'm going going to try and use a scant 1/4 inch on this too. That's a little bit harder to do. So here we go. I have a nice point there. And now I'm going to sew this, the house color, that's 1.5 by 4.5, onto the opposite side of the flying geese unit. And once again, I'm going to use a scant 1/4 inch. So there we have the top of the house. Now I'm going to work on the door section. So I'm going to take one of the house pieces and the door piece and just sew those two together. Somehow I lost that other leader. I don't know what I did with it. So I press towards the house color because it's a larger piece. That's the only reason. Okay, then add the other side. Let me just throw this through. Okay, so we have this. You notice the fabric's directional, it's all vertical. You can see, let me get a little closer. The flowers themselves really aren't directional because they're all just flat, but the stems are directional. They all go the same direction. So that's what makes that directional. Now I want to sew these two pieces together. I lost my ends there. Okay, so we have that. We're almost done. We just have to do the two side pieces. So I'll do that. And then I'll do the other side. Okay, now I'm going to press these open and I'll show you the block. Okay, so here it is. Okay, so here is the little house block. So I think that turned out pretty well. And let me measure it here. Okay, it is 6.5 inches tall, about 6 5/8 wide. So it's a little bit wider than it is tall. So you can trim this down to make it a 6-inch block. So make it 6.5 inches square. So these pieces on these sides give you some leeway. If you find you're having trouble, with your width or your length, you can use that scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. You can also make these wider. You can also make this wider, or even the house piece here, and that will help. And then you can just trim down. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to put these borders on, is so that I could trim them all down to the same size. Now this one, I think it's a little narrower, just by about 1/16 of an inch, not a whole lot, but it's a little shorter. So I can cut this one down to match that one, or I can redo them. So there's a lot of leeway in these blocks here. So let me show you all of those together. Okay, so there's all 3 blocks. So these are the first 2 I made. Here's the one I just made here. So I think they all turned out pretty cute, and I'm looking forward to making a quilt out of this. I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to do. I may do a row quilt, use these blocks, and then make another block to go with it, and maybe alternate instead of having one quilt with just all houses in it. Might alternate that with something else, like maybe a shoe fly block, or a churn dash, or something that's fairly easy. But I found this to be easy to deal with, these directional fabrics, because I don't have to worry about what are they going to look like when I flip them back over, like if I'm doing an easy corner triangle like I did in the bow tie blocks, which I have a stack over here. I always had to be conscious of which way the stems were going here in the center. Now using the big blocks in the corner, it wasn't a problem, wasn't any more difficult than these, making sure I have the stems going in the same direction. That's easy. It's when you're doing a flip and sew, or sew and flip, that's when it gets a little bit hard, because it's hard sometimes to figure out how to cut your fabric and sew it so that everything comes out the way you want it to. So I think this will help me get through this stack of fabric that I've got. I've still got quite a bit. It is going to make a lot of house blocks and a lot of bow tie blocks, and whatever other block I decide to make with it. But I'm looking forward to getting through the rest of that and moving on to another fabric. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Okay, that is it for the house block video. I hope you enjoyed this. This was a cute little block, and I really do enjoy making these. They're a lot of fun. They're not difficult. They've got more pieces in it than like a bow tie block. These go a little bit faster, but these are really cute. So I am enjoying these. So look online and look for other house patterns. There's a ton of house patterns out there, I'm sure, because I'm seeing just over the last couple of years, I know there were a couple other people that were doing house blocks. They were different than this, but this one's really simple, and but it's effective. It works. You can tell it's a house. Some will have chimneys, some will be kind of a corner view, some will have little pieces in here to look like bricks. All different kinds. And then of course I have a video from a couple years ago, the Christmas cottage quilt. They were all applique houses. So that was the Christmas cottage quilt of 2019, I think, maybe. And so there's that one that you'd look at if you want to just do applique houses. It's a whimsical house. It's different than this pieced house. There's 12 different houses. They're all different, so you can look at that. I'll put a link. I'll put a little little card here up at the top so that you can find that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links, and to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.